Hi. You know, over the years, I'm sure you have read lots of books and had different individuals come into your life or listen to speakers or podcasts or YouTube videos that have inspired you, as I have too. And I couldn't possibly put it all in one pot. However, over time, I've had different stages of what I was able to kind of absorb and inspire me. And for the longest time, I actually couldn't read. I couldn't focus. I just was so distracted, and my mind, was just feeling, at a source all the time. So the best that I could do was listen to YouTube videos and motivational things, but I made specific choices to just try to keep me moving forward on that path, but I couldn't read. But as I've become more comfortable with my feet grounded, I've really enjoyed the tactileness of a book. And again, I think it's another opportunity for me to shut off my phone and to just what I call get grounded and get quiet, and I get comfy. It's actually part of my morning routine. A variety of books. It depends on where I am as to what I need or what I feel. And I just allow myself to go with it. I don't get too serious about any of it. But anyways, over the years, I have had some really great books that I've gone back for and reviewed and looked at those corners that I've flipped over, and I wanted to share them with you. So I'm going to move as fast as possible, and it was hard to narrow these down. I'm going to list them below if you don't catch it, and of course, always feel free to message me in greater detail, whether you've read them before, if they've impacted you, or if you're more curious about it. I'd be happy to let you know from my perspective. Now, these books I've read at different moments in my life, and some are not really relevant to me now, but they were so special to me at different moments in my life. And I'll just try to briefly give you an idea as to where they're at. And so I just literally have them randomly here. So this is Pema Chodron. I don't know if I'm saying it correctly, but she's a monk, and she's actually in Canada. This one's Living Beautifully. I liked how she wrote it. It's a very interesting thing coming from Catholicism and finding a way to embrace my spirituality without the religion. And so I really appreciated her approach. And it was soulful. It was soulful. This is Paul Coelho, and this isn't the actual book. The Alchemist is the book, and I've lent it out, and I've given it out to many people as gifts. I love the book, and I've read it a couple times, and I was working with like a counselor. She was a little bit different, a little bit more spiritual, and she said that she keeps The Alchemist close by on her bedside table at all times, and just always has it to reference to. But of course, there's a few of his books that she's really, really good. This is called The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer. I haven't even totally gotten through it, but you can kind of see how worn it is. It's it's big, it's good. So when you're ready, it's a good one to just have, and you just pick at it. You just pick at these books. You know what kind of bugs me is this whole self-help. And I once had somebody say to me, it's like, I'm so done with self-help books. And I was like, I was just gobbling them up. And I was like, I really think being open to suggestions, ideas, experiences is part of growth. I think when we categorize things and when we become really rigid, I think that's when we stop growing. And so who are we to say when we talk about just looking at life in a different way? Doesn't it just change your day? You wake up and you really focus on gratitude. You could be in pain and sore and whatever, but you wake up in the morning and you kind of sit and you meditate and you focus on being grateful, or read, a couple chapters from a great read, and it inspires you. Doesn't that just kind of change your day? Be open. So this is Elizabeth Lesser. Elizabeth Lesser, actually, I've got a couple of her books here, and she was game-changing for me. Actually, I've got 3. Clearly, she was game-changing, and I'm just going to quickly go over Elizabeth Lesser. Love her. She was like a trailblazer, and she created, or was a partner in the Omega Institute, which is a big spiritual retreat and lecture organization, let's say. Let's call it a retreat center, and it is near New Hampshire, or it's in New Hampshire. Anyways, that way. Anyways, that was an awful explanation, and it doesn't give her justice. She's amazing. She went through a divorce, and when I read this book, Broken Open, if you're going through a divorce, or you are struggling with your inner strength, it's phenomenal. It is short chapters, to the point, no judgment, but it helps change that perspective. If you read it, please let me know what you think of it. This was huge for me. I love it. This is The Seeker's Guide, which is interesting. I've had this for a very long time, and ironically, just this morning I opened it and I just started reading, just wanted to read a chapter from it, and it was unbelievably cool, because it then brought me on this path of, literally, she was giving an example of a story, and it was relative to one of my children, and I went, oh, I was supposed to read that. So just really, really, really interesting. Now this one is, anytime I buy a hard copy, I take off the cover. I don't like it, and of course I love the yellow. But this is her most recent book, and it's called Cassandra Speaks, and it basically talks about the history of a life, and that history is his story. A lot of our stories, biblical stories, and come from the thoughts of men, and where were the women? Because they had an experience and they had a story. It was phenomenal. But I highly recommend you read at least Broken Open first before you read this one. It's big, it's fantastic. Cassandra Speaks is another. It was huge. I read it a week ago, and it's game-changingly phenomenal. Awakening Joy, James Baraz and Shoshana Alexander. It was great. This is my great little morning read. It's not little, but again, he tells his story, and for God Almighty, we all have had these moments of breaking open. It's the ones that have the breaking open that shed those expectations in life and beliefs, and then they kind of say, oh, there's another way to live. This is a great morning read or a nighttime read to just put yourself in place there. So this next one is one of many, and Sue Monk Kid, again, another trailblazer. She talks about the Black Madonna in The Life of Bees, which again, way back when The Life of Bees came out as a movie, I had read it. The movie, I then scripted out all different kinds of quotes from it, and I plastered it all over our work bathroom stalls, because I figured that's where we can read the most. And then we were lucky enough to bring our whole team at work to a private viewing of The Life of Bees. Like, that's how. But then it wasn't until later that Sue Monk Kid had came back into my life. There's a book called The Book of Longings, where she shows a perspective of if Jesus had a wife named Anna, which is fantastic. Again, it goes back to his story. Like, women were there. What's their story? What was their part? And we know that it was huge. So any Sue Monk Kid book is fantastic. Next, this is kind of fun. I've come to know Betsy Blankbaker, And she, again, I think is another trailblazer who she has basically written a memoir about orgasms and how she chose to, after her divorce, she had 4 kids, and she was with a variety of different partners, like relationships. And she just kept missing out on, I don't know who she was, the meaning of, I don't know, getting distracted, which is a huge component of being in a relationship and going into old ways and, really staying true to yourself. And so what she decided to do was spend a year by herself. And then she felt also in that, why shouldn't I be feeling fantastic and pleasuring herself? And so she stepped into something, and it was really well written. I enjoyed it thoroughly. Next, 5 Languages of Love. This has been around a long time. Gary Chapman. And, if you're, I don't know, it's kind of like, as I was saying earlier, I think when we stay open to change, to possibilities, to ways of thinking, even within our relationships, right? Like, it's hard to be in a relationship, and it's hard to be in a long relationship. Let's face it, we get into old ways and patterns. This is really good. It's good. It might just give some different perspective and a different way of relating to your partner. I encourage it. Robin Sharma, The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari. I read this. This is one of my first. This in 2008, I went to a workshop of his, and it was a game changer. I thought it was all business, going to be this great thing, and I was so excited. And in 2008, my youngest kid was 5, and I was like ready to really take on the work world again. And I left this workshop 3 days and went, oh my God. I cried and realized that there was this whole other side of me, and he brought it out. I don't read too much of Robin Sharma anymore, but it really is a great book. The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari. And this one here is called Cast, fairly new out. And I started reading it because, as with we're hearing more about, it's becoming clearer to me anyways, in a predominantly white city that I live in, that I become outraged and shocked about the injustice that occur with Black people and people of minority. I've always struggled with something as far as being female and the injustices that have occurred in my life. But really, let's be honest, I'm white and frankly privileged. And so I am too trying to understand and be open to hearing stories and understand the history. So I started reading this. Oprah says that it's like one of her favorites, and I would take that quite seriously. But I'm going to tell you, I ran into some roadblocks because a lot of it is really foreign to me. So part of something that my partner and I have stepped into is we've decided to read together. So he reads this. I do fall asleep, so we read it at night. But it's really nice because this is something, a perspective that we both aren't familiar with. And so it allows for a different conversation. And so it challenges us, and it spreads our minds and our thinking. And so I really, really encourage it. We've never done it before, but it was something that we're going to keep doing. The Book of Awakenings. Mark Nepo, this again, it takes me back to about 8 to 10 years ago, and it has a story for each day of the year, and they're insightful. There's meditations. Sometimes you just need that, like just a little, I call it a little spiritual hit, and it's great. Gary Zukav. This is one, The Seat of the Soul is again a really amazing book. And it brings me back about 8 years ago where I couldn't read a book, but I bought the book. And then I would just listen to his YouTubes, his interviews, any audios of his, and him and his partner at the time, or it still is, I do believe. They talked really quite frankly and but very openly and non-judgmental. It was just it's good. But you know, a lot of this you take as you need, and so I just you take it in and you'll see what kind of jives you. Oh my God, Maureen Murdoch. Okay, this might be one of the biggest books I've read. I started taking a course about 6 months ago, and I entered it thinking I was going to be taking a yoga course, you know, and go on my path of yoga teaching. And it turned into, again, a whole inward search and discovery upon myself. And in one of her lectures, which again, this yoga course, it included a yoga in the morning and a yoga at night sort of thing, but in between were all these lectures. And one of them, the beautiful instructor Bex, she explained the heroine's journey. And the heroine's journey is based from Joseph Campbell's The Hero's Journey. And the hero's journey is masculine for the man. The heroine's journey, Maureen Murdoch took it from, or extracted from the hero's journey, included her journey and what it looks like for a heroine. And it has been game changing. Actually, a lot of personal memoirs are written with the base of the heroine's journey as I'm working on myself. And somebody like Elizabeth Gilbert, she wrote Eat, Pray, Love, which I'm sure you know. It was based on the heroine's journey, which I've actually included Elizabeth's book, one of her books, The Commitment, but really it's Eat, Pray, Love would be my next book of choice to encourage you to watch, read. But I'm thinking watch because I actually brought my kids to a matinee of Eat, Pray, Love. Can you imagine? Like, if you've seen it, it's like, what kind of mother am I? But anyways, I brought them to see it, and that's how much I just loved. That's how big Eat, Pray, Love was to me. You know, it was just the breakdown and then making this huge decision after she just felt like she screwed up, and just stopped everything and took off and went and ate and drank in Italy, and then spent a couple months in India praying, which again, she got quiet, which she's never gotten quiet in her life, which again is like about sitting and meditating. And then of course going to Bali and just experiencing the beauty and movement, and then of course love. But really, right, that love is about love for ourselves. So that was it, Elizabeth Gilbert. This next one is Naomi Wolf. It's called Vagina. Now, I think the course that I was taking before, and Bex had introduced me to this particular book. This woman, again, talk about a trailblazer. I haven't got through it all, but ironically, I've got 2 copies. I've got a second copy somewhere. I've got one for Sophie and one for me, and one for Sophie when she's ready. And it was highly encouraged that we read this. It's everybody who has read this book has stated how amazing it is, and how we choose to love ourselves, take care of ourselves, lose the shame of what we look at, like our sexuality. Being raised Catholic, there is so much shame connected to our sexuality that I certainly lived in it for a really long time, and so it's still a journey for me, but I really recommend this one if you're curious about it and are ready to step into it. But again, I'm still at the point that I just open it up, I read a couple pages and go, all right, on to the next. And I haven't read it end to end, but I know it's there, and I know it's part of my step forward. Okay, another hard copy that I don't know where the cover is, because again, I don't like those covers, but this is Untamed, Glennon Doyle. Okay, it came out. It literally came to my door the beginning of the virus and the quarantine, and it was phenomenal. And you've probably read it. If you haven't, I can't say enough. Short stories, 3 to 7 pages each story. You can pick it up, you can put it down. She is raw, she is real, she's not judgmental. She talks about her own personal life, she talks about her family, her relationship, going through a divorce and marrying another woman. So good. So good. She's just, I just love women who just step out onto that edge and jump and know they're going to fly just because they believe in themselves and they're true to their story. They're true to themselves. And she's been on a wild journey, and she continues to state that she is still on that journey, which again, it's humbling and it's encouraging. There's, just losing that rigidity and losing the knowing, you just believe in yourself. And she certainly encourages that. And her other books as well were fantastic as well. So I encourage you to read those. But she's been amazing. And another woman who's amazing, who I used to say that I just have a girl crush on, Renee Brown. Renee Brown, again, was somebody who I initially couldn't read her books, so I listened to her TED Talks, her interviews, and again, I was highly inspired. And you know why I was highly inspired? The first thing, though, is because you know how I was talking about self-help books and everything before? She doesn't talk like that. She says, as she puts it, I cuss. And she keeps it real. She talks about her vulnerabilities. Well, of course, she's a shame and vulnerability researcher. She is phenomenal. She has technical component. She has research behind her. And she is so not judgy, again. And she's living her shit, right? She says when she's screwed up and what she had to do to move through it, being married to a doctor and a busy life and 2 kids, and just her own personal struggles. Daring Greatly probably was my bestest book that resonated with me with Renee. She is phenomenal. And I got to tell you, if any of these books, none of these kind of click with you, but you're kind of sitting with something with your relationship that your relationship needs a little, a different perspective. She is phenomenal. She has a Netflix series, just a movie show or whatever on, just one. And I highly recommend that she will, if anybody is going to kind of get through to a man who might have a lot of barriers around him, she's good. She's got, her approach is not light and fluffy. And she just is kind of a matter of fact. And when she throws those facts in there, research facts, she has a great way of presentation, a great, beautiful presence. I highly recommend, if you and your partner want to step into something, I would suggest you do that. Watch that, or maybe read that in bed. It's not really bedtime reading, but you gotta do. And the last one, it's interesting. Deepak takes me way back 20 years. And I didn't even know who Deepak was. I had come across, I used to always just put quotes, as I mentioned before. I put quotes in the bathroom so people could read them and just be inspired. And he was one of the first ones that I put up that I was just kind of like, And so that was like, as I said, probably about 20 years ago, when I didn't understand my awakening that was coming. I was still very linear. I was still caught up in, Catholicism. Not caught up, it's just the beliefs. I wasn't questioning things. Don't get me wrong, I don't think that religion is a bad thing. What I think needs to be encouraged is spirituality. So whatever that looks like to you. And where my belief with spirituality is, or whether it's we're talking about Deepak, who later I got into meditating with him, which was really enlightening for me in different books that I've read of his. My thing is that spirituality is about, you know, giving love, being love, but still standing up for who you are and what you believe to be true to you. And it may not be true or a belief that a denomination believes. So it's important for you to stand in your truth and whatever that looks like, and be the best human possible. So I hope that you found these inspiring, or maybe one might kind of click with you again. Enjoy, do whatever you feel needs to kind of stretch you and move you. Be open. Watch your routines and rigidity, and go with the flow, because I think that's really where the learning is. I'd love to hear how you're doing, if you're enjoying any other books that you might like to suggest for me to read, because I'll be doing this again. I always have a stack beside my bed. Take care. Keep going.